My fellow Americans, it is time to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind.
What's up, guys? It's Benny. Just 7 years after JFK was shot and killed on camera in Dallas, President Richard Nixon hauled his CIA director into the White House and demanded to know who shot John, saying that he must know which American intelligence agencies were involved.
Who shot John? It's Eisenhower to blame, it's Johnson to blame, it's Kennedy to blame, it's Nixon to blame, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. May become, not by me, but may become a very, very vigorous issue.
He says that this is going to become a vigorous issue because what the government had done up to that point made absolutely no sense. Their investigations were lies. Back then, the blood was still fresh. There were so many people still alive inside of the communities that created this assassination environment. And Nixon knew exactly where to find them. He went directly to the CIA and demanded to know who shot John. Did Nixon know about the documents that have now been released by the National Archives? Certainly he did and would have. And in the brand new release by the Trump administration of some 30,000 of promised 80,000 documents, or about halfway there, you're starting to see a constellation created, a mosaic, if you will, about what actually happened with the assassination of John F. Kennedy, who's to blame, and some dirty tricks that will seem not too old, but very familiar. Let's begin with exactly what we know and what we don't know. What we know about this document drop is that there is no smoking gun. So there are haters on the internet saying, wow, there's not like a record that says agent number 3629, Agent John Smith, was the one that pulled the trigger on the grassy knoll. And here's where he lives. And here's a copy of his fingerprints and his DNA. No, that doesn't exist. And I'm going to get into exactly why that doesn't exist. This is what the records look like. There are hundreds of pages of records, and there are thousands of entries, and there are 30,000 records specifically released. Here we go. This is like an example of them. Speaking of fingerprints, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. Some ink stains right there. This is what it looks like. And these documents have been gone over by some of the wisest and sharpest autists on the internet. So while it doesn't involve a smoking gun, it does involve an enormous amount of interesting information. And so those telling you that it is a disappointment are lying. And those telling you that it 100% points to one person at one agency, they're also lying. But what it does is it creates what will seem to you a very familiar constellation of government security failures with an intended result. Let me immediately dispatch somebody saying, there's nothing here. Oh, really? Here's Operation Mongoose files that we've never seen before, the CIA admitting that they have plans for agricultural sabotage and biological agents using bioweapons to control not only the weather, but also bring about regime change. If they're willing to do this, what won't they do? Well, would you look at that? The introduction of biological agents, which would appear to be natural in origin. Where have I heard that before? Really makes you rethink COVID here. This would produce regime change in another country or in this country. Is that what they did in 2020 with the release of COVID-19? Yes, exactly. That is what they did. It goes into great detail about the overthrow of other governments using unions like the AFL-CIO and also using biological warfare. Plans for inducing the failure of crops will be submitted by February 15th. This is Cuba in this instance, but there are other instances where you can see that the CIA is operationally overthrowing governments and using specific tactics. You don't see everything because, well, we have documents that prove how they destroyed all of the evidence, something that makes it very difficult when you're talking about the assassination of an American president, knowing that they had these protocols in place. JFK files, CIA enforced complete document control, no paper trail left at all. Declassification routing slips from the CIA Western Hemisphere Cuba Operational Group shows orders that recipients to destroy cover sheets after review. Reports were classified, reserved for the most sensitive covert actions. The documents then were effectively routed, hand-carried, destroyed. No mistakes, no loose ends. Recipients were warned improper filing or unauthorized retention was forbidden. They'd straight up kill you if they found that you were backstabbing them. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, of course, what John F. Kennedy's investigator of the CIA found. Arthur Schlesinger, who's a historian and an intellectual, was tasked with JFK and investigating the CIA, and his warning was that the CIA has grown powerful and reckless, running its own government, a state within a state, he calls it, saying that the CIA has its own military, its own air force. It outnumbers U.S. diplomats. Covert ops are shaping U.S. policy without presidential approval. Iran, Guatemala, Cuba. Failed secret wars that were intended to start World War III. The British intelligence service operates under strict control, but the CIA runs completely and totally unchecked. They can create a world within a world. Kennedy was warned about this in 1961. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. We've never seen these files before, but they're called the Schlesinger files, a 15-page memo calling for JFK to break up the CIA. And he was planning on doing that in his second term. He wouldn't see that second term, even though he was rocketing through to a guaranteed re-election in 1964. They found somebody to take care of that. They found a CIA agent named Lee Harvey Oswald. Look at this. According to Lee Harvey Oswald's Marine commander in Japan, Harvey Oswald was in the Marines, he's stationed in Japan. The Marine commander said, no, Lee Harvey Oswald was a CIA agent. He was recruited by the CIA while he was working for me in the Marines. Whew, they got to this guy. Shut this down fast, but there's the document. Lee Harvey Oswald was a CIA asset, and that the CIA was warned, along with the State Department, time and time again about what would happen. They were warned that Lee Harvey Oswald was going to assassinate JFK, that Lee Harvey Oswald would himself get killed. 30 and 45 days from these events happening, there are documents here that say, yes, this is what happened. And they ignored it. Boy, it makes you wonder. Kind of like the FBI ignoring President Trump's would-be assassin, Ryan Ralph, when he had illegal firearms, when they were warned of him, when he was behaving like a complete criminal sociopath, doing all these very mysterious actions with foreign governments, just like Oswald. It's almost like they set up a system to fail. And that's really the point here. Check this out. The CIA was watching Lee Harvey Oswald. They have tapes of him. Where are those tapes exactly? Here are the tapes. They were spying on Lee Harvey Oswald, their former agent. This is how Lee Harvey Oswald got to Russia. How do you think Ryan Ralph got to Ukraine all those times? Remember, he kept going to Ukraine even though he's dead broke? Yeah. Lee Harvey Oswald is the same situation. He's a complete loner, a complete loser. But they were surveilling him and his entire family. Photos of him in Red Square. How'd he get to Russia exactly? It's our CIA, man. And Lee Harvey Oswald apparently met Jack Ruby just weeks before the assassination. What did they do? Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald will be killed after he kills Kennedy. Would you look at that? They knew each other. There was no connection. Now there is a connection. That's really strange. Also, what's really strange is, of course, the reactions right after Lee Harvey Oswald was killed. Lee Harvey Oswald constantly told media, when he was allowed to appear before cameras, which was just seconds at a time, that he's a patsy, that he didn't kill Kennedy, that he didn't shoot those shots, that he wasn't the one who was firing in the Texas School Book Depository or anywhere else. We never got to hear the full story. We never got to hear any interviews at all because he was killed. Well, the FBI was really happy about that result. Strange for a law enforcement investigation. Just hours after Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover demanded a quick public report to stop conspiracy theories from spreading. Hoover wrote that there is nothing further in the Oswald case except that he is dead. Nothing to see here, right? Yeah. He wanted to ensure the public believed that Oswald acted alone. The memo showed that the FBI was frustrated that Oswald's murder left them without a chance to get more answers. Oh, really? Well, sure doesn't seem that way. The CIA was very nervous about both Italian and Russian reports saying that they killed JFK. Doth protest too much, huh? A newly declassified memo reveals the CIA monitored an Italian communist publication that accused the U.S. intelligence agencies of orchestrating the JFK assassination. The Russians, in fact, warned of heightened assassination attempts against JFK in the weeks leading up to it, and lo and behold. It's very strange, isn't it? What's also strange, and this isn't a new document, but it is a document that is getting a lot of publication now, is a secret report about CIA agent and World War II hero Garrett Underhill, who the day after the assassination of John F. Kennedy fled Washington, D.C., saying that he'd uncovered that a CIA splinter group was responsible for the assassination. He did this quite accidentally, but now he's going to be killed by the CIA. And then less than 6 months later, he was found shot in his own apartment, 12 times in the back of the head, and the coroner ruled it a suicide, you see. That's just how these things work. J. Garrett Underhill had been an intelligence agent during World War II. He was a recognized authority on limited warfare and small arms. He's a researcher and a writer on military affairs, first-name basis with many top brass at the Pentagon, deeply respected. He worked with CIA officials, one of the agency's unpeople, who performed special assignments. What I find particularly interesting about that, this is that he was also in league with an arms broker that sold CIA guns, including the famous Carcano-style weapon that was used to kill JFK. Just gotta know. You gotta know what you gotta know, right? CIA's clandestine operation manual revealed. Document outlines CIA's meticulous profiling systems to gather biographical data, investigative information, and creating detailed dossiers on surveillance targets. This is stuff that they don't want out. This is a good release. This is fascinating stuff. It's very interesting. Double agents. The operational decision authorizing double agents of a foreign power will be coordinated with the counterintelligence staff, though no operational approval or provisional approval is required to create a foreign agent from a foreign power. And let's talk about foreign powers. Because Russia, there are deep ties for Oswald to Russia and to Cuba. Was that because he was being stationed there? Is this because they were creating a patsy? That's what I assume. They were creating the perfect patsy. Oh, it was the Russians. Oh, it was the Cubans. Don't ask too many questions. Oh, he was radicalized Marxist. Don't ask too many questions. Shut up. He's dead, right? Shut up. Don't ask. How about Israel? CIA assisting Israel in the development of nuclear weapons. Even prior to JFK's administration, JFK's attempts to stop Israel from developing the nuclear bomb was seen as an existential threat to Israel's existence. Yikes. Then when it came to what gets redacted in these documents, the CIA states, the only thing that we actually want redacted is the term Israel, Israeli, and Israeli intelligence. Yikes. CIA has no objections to the declassification or release of information of this document except these words, Israeli intelligence. CIA requested that any mention of Israel be redacted from the JFK files. Israel is literally the only thing that they're requesting be redacted. Okay. So here's what we know. We know that CIA counterintelligence chief James Angleton marked the redaction of Israeli intelligence services in their cooperations with the CIA. Now, the reason for this may not be as nefarious as it seems, or maybe even more nefarious. Here's what we know. That the CIA assisted in Israel getting a nuclear weapon. Now, Israel getting a nuclear weapon, especially just in the decade or two after the creation of the nuclear weapon, is a very scary prospect because you don't want a bunch of nuclear bombs going around the world, and nuclear proliferation is a bad thing. But the CIA helped them smuggle the uranium out of America and into Israel. Processed uranium for the U.S. Navy is alleged to have been smuggled materials into Israel for the development of nuclear weapons starting in 1961. Months before his assassination, Kennedy wrote a strongly worded letter to Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion demanding international inspections of his nuclear reactors to make sure that they're not creating a nuclear bomb. This followed Kennedy's 1961 directive for American inspections to verify that Israel was not developing nuclear weapons. Israel staged a fake control room and dummy installations to conceal its efforts from American scrutiny. LBJ allowed the Israelis to continue building their nuclear weapon. Kennedy didn't want it for obvious reasons. This is the individual at the CIA who was responsible for the Kennedy assassination. I'm not sure, but certainly responsible for this clandestine nuclear program with the Israelis. It's just an interesting depth, deeper level, right, of understanding here of what's going on. And so, would you kill in order to, because the American president can really make your life a living hell if you're lying to him and if you're trying to create a nuclear weapon. Also, if the CIA, as has been established, is just going behind the back of the president and creating their own policy. The president doesn't want a nation to get a nuclear weapon. The CIA does want it to get a nuclear weapon for whatever reason. And so then you're at odds. Don't you immediately create like the biggest battle of the executive power in our lifetimes? Yes. Oh, absolutely. It's amazing what else we've learned. The CIA procuring female companions for Saudi and Muslim kings when he was here for a state visit. CIA personnel helped King Hussein, who was especially who was desirous of female companions during his Los Angeles visit. Not just that, not just the Saudis, but also the King of Jordan. They set him up with a Jewish starlet, is what he asked for. Okay. Then some of these documents show that Hollywood magic is being used to blackmail various world leaders. Man, what does that sound familiar? Look at this. These are the receipts that show that the CIA created a set in order to match a photograph of a room in Moscow. And then they hired actors to look like world leaders performing sex acts with women. And they took photos of that. They made a short film that was delivered back to the CIA and stills that were delivered to the CIA in order to be sent to the nations and the leaders in order to blackmail them. Boy, does this sound like Epstein? It's the exact same op. Here it is in black and white. You're so stupid if you don't just read the documents. So they made this very short film of like a sex scene that involved a world leader and a woman who he shouldn't be having sex with. And then they use that film, they distribute it in the country of the leader in an attempt to embarrass him and hopefully, as a result, remove what was considered to be a very serious threat to national security. Dirty, filthy, diabolical. But it's right there in black and white. We live in a fake world. And we continue to learn that as we see time after time after time in these document releases, fake media companies that are started by the CIA. They're not real media companies. They're fake media companies. They just straight up say it. Political and psychological warfare. Radio broadcasting by the CIA. CIA radio broadcasting. Techniques available to the CIA to control media. Covertly directed broadcasting. We're telling radio stations what to play. They're also reading, of course, the mail back before a digital era. CIA was opening U.S. Postal Service mail being sent to Russia. Had 300 CIA staff indexing 250,000 names. A lot of crazy stuff. Oh yeah, let's just open every single letter that goes to Russia. Got it? Cool. I mean, what do you think they're doing to our text messages, right? How do you think they're using our cellular devices to spy? When you know, you know. And then they're using, of course, students as spies. The CIA was sending hundreds of agents into Cuba under the guise of being students. Visa. I wonder how much this is still happening. in our country and to our country. And this brings me nicely along to this final little clip here that I think says perfectly what I'm trying to say here, and it does include Israeli intelligence, but it includes sort of tactics and braggarts about the tactics of what's going on here. And this is it, ladies and gentlemen. The real takeaway from these documents is that we live in a fake, media-controlled world, and that the bad actors that we always suspected in the JFK assassination are in fact the bad actors. That the government knew about the threats to JFK's life. They put him in a position, because who controls the motorcade? Who controls the motorcade for JFK? Who says you're going to sit inside of a limousine that's open air, that doesn't have a bubble around it? You know, it's the 60s. Like, there have been assassinations for generations. Franz Ferdinand, I mean, multiple presidents assassinated. Of course you don't drive them through without a bubble around of protection. They forced JFK into a kill box, much like they've done with Trump. And that's the real crime here. That's how you keep your fingerprints off it, right? You create the conditions for the killing. And then you say you shrug your shoulders. That's what the documents really show. And they show that the world is very much a stage for these people, and they cast guys like Lee Harvey Oswald, right? They look for people, they cast them in these roles, and then they blame everything on them, and they say they knew nothing about it. But they did know about it. They were warned about the Kennedy assassinations. There was something very dark and nefarious going on with Jack Ruby. Somebody knew that Jack Ruby was going to go kill Oswald. They were all going to kill JFK. There are vested interests that are very heavy on the chessboard. Marxism, definitely. Mob actions, definitely. Like nuclear proliferation, absolutely. And this Mossad agent right here kind of explains, like, puts a bow on all of this. Whether it's the fake hotel rooms and the Epstein stuff that they were creating with world leaders, right? You can see it all there in the documents. Or like the biological weapons and the weather control, which are there in the documents as well. The death of the world leaders or the overthrow of these regimes, it all goes back to the same basic point, which is that they believe that they control the world. And that all the rest of us are just living inside of a fantasy, and they're actually the ones in charge.
Convince Hezbollah to buy this?
Well, obviously, they didn't know that they were buying it from Israel.
Who did they buy it from, or think they were buying it from?
We have an incredible array of possibilities of creating foreign companies that have no way being traced back to Israel, shell companies over shell companies who affect the supply chain to our favor. We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors. We're the producers. We're the main actors. The world is our stage.
Can't sum it up better than that. They created a fake world, and they let what happened to JFK happen. The CIA clearly knew, the FBI clearly covered up, and they got their result. Who's the they? We're still searching. But the picture has become more into focus. And for that, we're thankful for the Trump administration. It's your boy Benny. Like, share, and subscribe. More truth. Truth is out there. Yeah.